I'm Alex Batdorf, and you're watching Get Shit Done, the place where we're taking female entrepreneurs from inspiration to activation by giving you access to the resources you need to grow your company on your own terms. Now look, Queens, when I think about the success of any of my companies, well, the first one failed, so we can't count that one. But if it's my first company, it was the second company I co-founded, if it's even now, the major thing I can say in all of them that can attribute to the success that I have is the network, the tribe, whatever you want to call it. Because at the end of the day, when you're building a company, your tribe, your network is going to step in. They're going to be the ones to support you in the hard times, in the good times. They're also going to be integral, if you do it the right way, to make connections, to give you access into circles that you might not otherwise have. That's why it's so important to build out your tribe, your network. And let's get this straight. I don't care if you're an ambivert. I don't care if you're an extrovert. I don't care if you're an introvert. And you're saying, I just don't know how to network. I don't get comfortable with people. It doesn't matter. It's not about being the loudest person in the room. It's about being able to have a conversation so you can establish a connection. That's why I brought on my guest today, who is a badass serial entrepreneur. She also killed it in the corporate space before that. And she's going to walk you through how she built and nurtured her network so you can do the same. Beth Haggerty is the founder and CEO of Declare, formerly known as Parity Partners, a platform helping companies increase gender parity and diversity in high-impact sectors. Beth is a veteran digital media executive and serial entrepreneur who has managed and built global divisions and companies in the digital, television, and e-commerce sectors. She has served as founder, chief executive officer, chief operations officer, and chief revenue officer of companies that were acquired by several of the world's best-known brands, including Walt Disney, AT&T, and Nielsen. Basically, to summarize, Beth came, she saw, she slayed. And when she's not slaying as a corporate boss or entrepreneurial goddess, she's being recognized by publications like Advertising Age as one of the top 20 interactive executives and women to watch. Beth, welcome to Get Shit Done.
Thanks, Alex. Great to see you.
This is Parity headquarters?
Yes, it is.
How many employees do you guys have?
We have 18 now, plus interns and other contractors.
That's amazing. So when did you guys start?
The fall of 2016.
Wow. Okay.
So a little over 2 years.
That's quick growth.
Went fast.
Which is amazing.
Yes.
And you guys are growing exponentially this year, which is amazing.
Yes, we're hiring like crazy, and we're growing about 300% again this year.
Great signs. Great signs.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of that had to do with networking, which we'll get into.
Yes, it did.
But I always like to start out, if you can explain what Parity Partners is and why you started it.
Okay, great. So Parity Partners is really, our mission is to catalyze the move to, or what we would say, the shift to more equal and more empowered women. And we do that by focusing on where we think the greatest impact is, which is on institutions or companies primarily. And so we work with companies and the women that work for them on helping them find opportunities, professional training, and we provide networking and community so that they can also help each other in terms of facilitating the learning and career development and professional growth.
That's awesome. I find your career fascinating because you've done it all.
Thank you.
And well on each side. So
Thank you.
You've done corporate.
Yes.
And held many amazing positions. And then you were able to successfully become an entrepreneur, have successful exits, and so on and so forth. How integral has networking been for you in growing your business or even just your career?
Networking, I tell young women this too, and there are periods of time when I think we forget it. You need to think about networking as a core asset that you're carrying throughout your career, and you're constantly feeding it and building it. And it's arguably the most important asset you have.
Yeah.
Constantly leverageable, constantly something that no matter where you go, you're taking it with you. So my career, when I started in publishing, actually print publishing, I started in sales. So networking was always part of what I learned early. And the bigger the network, the more you can get things done. The more you can get things done quickly, the more valuable you are, because as you know, companies look at your networks, particularly as you're growing companies, because that's leverageable and it diminishes really important timelines, like who you can get to quickly to fund your company, who you can get to quickly to drive revenue and sales, who do you know to bring in talent. And so I think it's something, one of the things that I did that was a mistake is when I had children, I kind of shut down. I had children later in life, and it was like, I don't want to go to another cocktail party. I just need a break. Or I was also working, and so many mothers, I think, working moms, like, I just need to go home.
Yeah.
And so I went through a period where my network really, if you don't cultivate it, it really does fall off. And so I realized after that I had to rebuild my network. And so you got to try to figure out how to keep your network, even if you have to figure out, I think, other tools, even if you can't be out or, connecting on a regular basis, depending on what's happening in your life, you need to be able to pay attention to it, always.
So what do you feel are some of the key things you did to cultivate your network? And I'd love to go back to how you had to recultivate it.
Yes.
But in the beginning, or even as you were shifting from corporate to entrepreneurship, because you can cultivate your old network, but now this is a completely different ballgame. So what do you feel were key things that made you successful in networking, that helped you to catapult where Parity is today?
So I think a couple things. You need to bring value. You have to be authentic, to use an overused word, about it's not just all about what you need. Yeah. So building networks is very much quid pro quo, and you have to authentically want to help you, right? So when I see you, I say, Alex, what can I do for you? How are Get Things Done going? What can we do for you at Parity? And you do the same with me. And that's really important, because when somebody calls me that I've known forever, I immediately think like, okay, absolutely, what can I do to help them? And I do know that there are people I can call. So you really want to deliver value in every interaction and be really cognizant that it's not just about now. You don't burn bridges, people come back around, and so you want to make sure you're cognizant that networks are something you're going to go back to the person, or they're going to come back to you.
Yeah. So one of my favorite books, and at first the title turned me off. It's called Never Eat Alone.
Yeah, I've heard about that
by
book.
Keith Ferrazzi. And at first I was just like, because I'm the type of person, I do eat alone. Like, I'll go and take myself on dates, things like that. But the content of it is amazing, where he basically walks you through key things that you should do to network and build and cultivate this audience.
Right.
So certain things, and I'll link to it below, is how he created a spreadsheet. And he was very heavily in sales too. But he created a spreadsheet and it's interesting. Basically tiered out, had categories for people. It's very intense.
Right.
But it helped him to stay on top of his network.
Right.
And then he would call people up, just even offering value, like you're saying. If it's, I thought of this, I met this person, and they're saying I need someone who does videography. I met this so-and-so over here, and I'm just randomly making a connection because I know you two need it, and without expecting anything in return. It's just saying, I'm looking out for people. So what are some key examples that you've done in your career to cultivate? So you talked about adding value to people. So did you track people in a spreadsheet, or did you have calendar invites to yourself saying contact this person at this date? Because I know that's something I'm struggling with right now, as it gets overwhelming when you're running a business.
Right. the best networkers connect people to people.
Yeah.
So a couple just tips are, and my partner Karen does this so well, Karen Efron. You know, you never really should leave a meeting and without saying like, how can I help you? What can I do for you?
Yeah.
And then usually people will say, oh, one or two things. You also shouldn't leave without saying like, having in your mind, you know, what can I ask you? So everyone's, and women are naturally, as you know, not as good at this, not socialized.
Yeah.
You know, men are just really like, you know, do me a solid. Like, hey, dude, I need to meet this person. We're seeing women do that much more often.
Yeah.
And so it's one of the things that I think have changed in recent times are women are really stepping up and realizing that they want to help. And so we all need to say, how can I help you? Yeah. And constantly thinking through like, oh, you know, and even being more active, like, oh, you know who you should meet? Yeah. You know who you should meet just based on what you're hearing, and just always giving. Networking well is about, just like you just said, just give it, you know, let's help each other. And then it always comes back to you.
I like what you mentioned too about female founders now being more vocal about, you know, saying, oh, here's, you know, how you can help me. Because even in this book, he talks about how networking is about being a good giver, but just as much as being a good receiver.
Yes.
Because I feel in particular women, we feel bad about asking for things. That's a good point,
yes.
And so we're willing to give, but then it's just like, well, it's okay to receive. And that's something I struggle with and I have to challenge myself on. It's like, when someone says, how can I help you? Say, what do you need help
on?
And actually be willing to receive. So,
and even ask up front. I know that was a very difficult for me to get, like, you know, I just grew up, don't ask anybody, take care of yourself. And so I think it's hard for many of us to ask, and it's like a muscle, you know, you have to ask, and people like to help. I think we forget, like, I'm happy if you ask me to help. I think the other thing is be really clear in your ask. It's like looking for a job, right? Somebody wants to help you, but be really clear. You know, can you connect me to this person? Not like, do you know anybody in venture?
Yeah.
People need, the more clear you are in your ask, more specific, the easier it is for the, you know, person that's going to help you to deliver on that. Think about how busy you are. If I say to you, Alex, can you help me get to somebody in, you know, Chicago that's involved in the venture community, you're like, oh, I have to think about that, I'm not sure. But if I said, can you introduce me to
this specific person? I find this with a lot of younger women that I mentor who are like, I'm looking for this type of position, and it's so vague, and I'm just like, do you have a list of companies? Like, because I don't have the time. There's so much in my, like, information overload already.
Yes.
And for me to say, yeah, I know so-and-so, I'm like, if you can give me a list.
Yes.
Or go even to my LinkedIn and say specifically, I like the people who give me, like, an email and map out, here are the specific people I would like to connect with.
Yes.
If you know them and you're willing to make an intro, yes. I'm like, yes. And they give me even a blurb.
Exactly.
So if you're able to even give someone a blurb so they don't have to do the work.
Absolutely.
And they can do their own riff on it. It's perfect. And that works with networking, with partnerships, even introductions to investors.
Yes.
Too. It helps.
Yes, absolutely.
When you had kids, you kind of let your network stand still. And I can totally relate to that, and I don't have kids, but I feel like
but you've done a startup, so I'm sure you were totally heads down, 2 startups.
How did you kind of get back to cultivating those relationships again?
So you have to just begin somewhere, and so I think beginning to think, like you just said, who are the people that I haven't caught up with? Who are colleagues of mine from, you know, a few years ago that I haven't seen or caught up with? And you just begin reaching out and saying, hey, you know, I'd love to see you, let's grab coffee. Particularly if you're in transition or you're looking for your next thing. It is good to just do a catch-up, and then naturally you begin to, you know, start making connections again, because on every one of those coffees, They'll say, hey, what are you up to? And, oh, okay, I'll connect you to this person. Or, you should have a ask. You just begin. You just begin reaching out and saying, oh, we haven't caught up. I was thinking about you. Let's get together.
And something as simple as I've noticed in my network is just saying even happy birthday.
Yes.
Or was thinking of you. It doesn't need to be anything grand.
It's a good point.
It's like, was thinking of you. And that can make someone's day so great.
Completely.
Because we're so used to people asking and wanting something from us.
Yes.
We're just like, I don't want anything from you. I just want to make sure you're okay.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even have to be a coffee. You're right. It has to be an email or social.
So it seems like a huge part of this is the nurturing. So you were able to recultivate these relationships after they were maybe stagnant for a little while. What are things that you're doing now to make sure that you nurture relationships and that your network is staying intact?
I think you also have to free your time. You do have to start going to events and things again. Not do what I did during that period and say, I don't have time.
Yep.
So you just, and whether that means I'll do these two things, you have to do them. And one of the things we feel really strongly about in terms of how we created Parity is we wanted to provide those linkages that scaffolding, as one of my partners calls it, because all people are too busy, right? And women are particularly busy if you're raising a young family or whatever you're doing, taking care of parents, and so sometimes the on-ramps are hard to figure out, so the pod structure we have at Parity means every year you're going to be in a pod, you're going to develop 10 to 12 deep relationships with a carefully curated group. And when that year is over, you have those relationships for your career. But you have to commit to do that once a month. 2 hours a month.
Once a month.
So you have to, whether it's a Parity or another thing you're doing, you really have to figure out, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to say I'm too busy, and I'm just going to do this. And then it continues to build on its own.
And I love that because that's something I had to evaluate going into the new year. Like when I was on holiday, I was really thinking, okay, how can I maintain this balance? Because it can't just be all work.
Yes.
I need to be, like, a big part of why I've gotten to where I've gotten, I would say, is because I know how to connect with people.
Yes.
I learned that very early on. I tell people, I went to University of Chicago, but I was nowhere near the smartest person there, and I will not pretend to be.
I know about that.
But what I was good at was I was good at developing relationships, but I let that fall by the wayside.
You did.
And what I had to look at is, okay, where can I get started? So it's like scheduling just a dinner on a Saturday night.
Exactly.
And looking at where I was spending my time before.
Yes.
So I was designating 7 days a week, literally work.
Yes.
And it was just like, okay, for personal, that means I can designate time on my weekends or even on a weekday for a dinner.
Right.
Schedule it. Going to an event. Like I tell people, if you can go to one event a week, great.
Yes.
If it's maybe one every other week,
Yeah.
one a month, but just do something so you're getting out there. It's just something, but really looking at why you're saying you're busy and what is making you so busy. Because you can always make time for something, but it's what you prioritize.
Yes. And what helped me change is my attitude on networking.
Yeah.
So it's, as we know, it's a bad word. None of us like to do it. But for me, I changed the way I thought about it. So I thought, well, if I can learn something new, which you do from almost every encounter, or figure out what you want to learn, then you're thinking, well, I'm a continuous learner, and the more people I connect with, the more I learn something new, which is cool, and it's great for you, and it's enriching in so many personal and professional ways.
Yeah.
So networking is not just like, I hear people say, well, I have a rule where if I can go to one event and I meet one person, new person, then I leave. And, just why don't you say, I need to learn something new and cool.
I like that.
It might be like, go see the show, or, I heard about this class or something. And I think the other thing is to find networks that provide continuous relationship building, which is what Parity is. Because networking is not really going to an event and leaving with a couple cards, because then you have to follow up, and sometimes it works, but that's what feels like networking.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like authentic relationship and connections. where I'm like, there's sometimes I leave with nothing, like
Yes.
no, because I didn't feel like I connected with anybody.
Right.
And I don't want to force it. You shouldn't. It's a good learning lesson though, to see, oh, maybe what you learned from it. I like that you said that.
Yeah.
What am I learning from this?
Yes.
Is now I know maybe this is not the best atmosphere for me.
For you,
So
right.
now I'll, tailor what I go to next to this. So on the topic of events, I know a lot of people struggle with this, and I know a lot of women do, is what are some of the events that you tried to go to? Because I had to narrow this down a lot, and in each market, there's a lot of fluff, there's
Yes.
a lot of noise out there,
Yes.
and it's figuring out, well, what's best for me? So how do you approach this so you're not wasting your time going to places that feel like some of these, there's these groups that do these network after
Yes.
5 p.m. groups, and I find that those aren't the best for me because a lot of people just want to hand out cards.
That's
and I don't
true.
feel like I make good connections, but I had to learn it the hard way.
Yes.
So what is a way that you filter through that noise?
So I think it's what you said. You have to do what you're most comfortable doing, what works for you. I've never felt comfortable at a big event or a cocktail party.
Yeah.
I feel tense. I don't like idle chit chat. I don't feel like I'm great at that. So for me, it's much more fulfilling to have a coffee, or there's a lot of ways now that, I think there are curated events, whether it's dinners or what we do with Parity. And so the more curated, and I hear this all the time, if you know you're going to, at least for me, somewhere where I know I'm going to learn things, I know that it's going to be energizing.
Yeah.
In a way, I wish I was better at the big events. Some people are really brilliant at it.
Yeah.
It's just not my thing. So I've learned to not do that as much.
Yeah.
Some people, always go to South by Southwest, always go to the conferences.
Yeah.
I just find that's not, maybe like you, it's not really a thing that has worked for me.
Yeah, and it's really figuring out like what environments
Where are you
thrive,
comfortable, right?
and what are you hoping to gain? Because I think
Yes.
people go into networking events not really defining the objective. Just like, oh, just meeting, but like what specifically are you looking for?
Why are you
out
there?
Exactly.
Yes.
And if you answer that question, I think that it will help you to really tailor it down. Okay, I am, for example, I have a really good friend who's a jewelry designer, and she has been in New York for a while, and I'm like, you need to get out. And so
Yes.
it's like, go to like at least one event a week and go where your people are, your tribe.
Yes.
And so she had to really define, I'm like, don't just go to any jewelry event, but is there a niche where you fall into that place?
Yeah.
And what are you hoping to gain? For her, she's like, I want to develop more partnerships and more leads for customers. And I'm like, okay, that's your objective.
Yes.
So go to those events.
Yeah.